Eventually, Fedorov's M1913 design became the Fedorov automatic rifle in 1916. The full Russian language designation was, and you'll forgive my lack of ability to pronounce Russian language numerals or decimals at this point, 2.5 Linearna Avtomaticheskaya Vintovka Fedorova, or 2.5 line Fedorov automatic rifle. The line reference indicating the caliber of the bullet in tenths of an inch. Since the 6.5 by 50 SR millimeter cartridge, that is to say semi-rimmed, cartridge's bullet was a nominal land-to-land diameter of .256 caliber, the line designation was, in this case, 2.5, as compared with the standard Imperial Russian 7.62 by 54 R millimeter cartridge with its nominal land-to-land diameter of .300 and corresponding 3-line nomenclature. The rifle was eventually issued, beginning in December 1916, to a single company of the 189th Izmailovsky Regiment. About 50 rifles were used by men of the company, and about 100 men were put into pairs of shooter and loader. One man would carry an M1916 Fedorov automatic rifle, and the other would carry a Japanese Type 38 infantry rifle or carbine, some of the thousands given to Imperial Russia by its recent former enemy Japan as part of World War I aid. The advantage of this weapon pairing was that the M1916 gunner could use his partner's 6.5 by 50mm Japanese ammunition in his own gun. These two-man M1916 teams were also given telescopic sights, binoculars, and even armored shooting plates to protect them from enemy fire. The rifles had been made to permit selective fire, but all available documentary evidence seems to indicate that only the semi-automatic setting was used. Their use presents history with its first combat usage of semi- or fully automatic rifles in history, predating by several months even the use of the 8 by 50mm R Lebel caliber M1917 RSC rifle on the Western Front by France. Eventually, 5,000 of Fedorov's rifles were ordered to be built, but only slightly fewer than 100 were eventually made, with some also going to arm Russian aircrew who flew on aircraft designer Igor Sikorsky's giant Ilya Muromets bombers. The aircrew wrote glowing reports of the arm's capabilities. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution put an end to Russia's involvement in World War I, and with it, the Tsarist regime. After serving at the front during the first half of World War I, Fedorov returned to work at an abandoned Danish Madsen factory in the town of Kovrov. Here he refined his model 1916 design. After being noticed by the early leadership of the new government, which had christened the country the RFSFR in Russian language acronym, or Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, later to be replaced by the more familiar USSR or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in English, new life came to the M1916 design. The rifle was again placed in production for the new Soviet Red Army, this time as the Fedorov Automat, and a further 3,000 were produced, with some being used to put down anti-communist rebels in the Karelian Isthmus near Finland in the 1921-1922 period. As on the Great War's Eastern Front a few years before, Red Army soldiers were also awed by the rifle's rapidity of fire, as had been their Tsarist predecessors. Eventually, the Soviet Union's General Artillery Directorate, the Bolshevik successor to Imperial Russia's main artillery directorate, ordered that further efforts toward automatic small arms designs use the standard 7.62 by 54 R-millimeter cartridge in order to simplify logistics, and because the amount of World War I era 6.5 by 50 Japanese ammunition was drying up by the final years of the 1920s. For the next decade, the Soviet armed forces primarily used the tried and true 5-shot bolt-action Model 1891 Mosin Nagant, and that design was later slightly modified in length, type of barrel, and handguard retaining bands, and even later receiver shape, to form the Model 1891-30 infantry rifle, though Soviet soldiers continued to call it, affectionately, the Troilineyka, or, roughly translated, the good old three-liner. Nevertheless, research and development into self-loading rifle designs continued during this time. Born in 1894 in the small hamlet of Fedotovo, in the Vladimir Governorate northeast of the capital Moscow, Sergei Gavrilovich Simonov began work in 1918 at Kovrov on the then soon-to-be discontinued M1916 Fedorov rifle production line. He continued to work and came up with his own automatic rifle design in 1826,
although it didn't even make it to troop trials, but used two design ideas that remain a fixture of his subsequent designs. One would be a gas piston system of operation, wherein hot propellant gases from the fired cartridge case would be tapped by either a hole in the barrel or, in the case of his first Semenov design, a cupped gas trap at the muzzle, and diverted to a tube next to the barrel in which a piston was located. The hot gas would then impinge on the piston, pushing it to the rear, whence the piston would itself impinge upon the face of the bolt carrier, unlocking the bolt carrier and bolt out of battery, extracting the later ejecting the fired case, recocking the gun, and then, using energy imparted by this movement to a recoil spring behind the bolt, allow for the recoil spring to drive the bolt carrier and bolt forward again to lock in preparation for the firing once again. The second element of his 1926 design was the use of an elevated support wedge fixed inside the underside of the receiver that wedged into a groove on the bolt's underside to assist in lockup. The exposed gas piston on the first Semenov prototype was not well suited for the needs and dirt of combat, and the muzzle gas trap, a design that had originated early in the 20th century in Denmark by Danish designer Soden Hansen Bang, and was later adapted by Germany on its G40M semi-automatic rifles of World War II, was felt to make the rifle too muzzle heavy. In addition, the rightward mounting of the operating rod caused concern over the arm's center of balance. Here we see a diagram illustrating the difference between a gas trap and a gas port design. The gas trap was used, again, by Semenov on his early designs. This particular diagram shows the differences between a gas trap and a gas port variant of the US M1 Garand rifle, although the basic concept remains the same. We see in the gas trap that there is no port in the barrel as such. Rather, there is a barrel extension, and in that barrel extension is a hole allowing gas to flow into the gas tube, in this case underneath the barrel, actuating a gas piston, which then actuates and works the action. In the gas port design, by contrast, there is no barrel extension. The barrel runs for its full length, and in a groove of the barrel close to the muzzle, there is a hole which bleeds off into the gas tube. Further and very similar designs were submitted for trials from Semenov in 1934 and again in 1935. Both designs were gas piston operated and used a bolt-actuated wedge on the bottom edge of the receiver to assist with locking, but as both were in selective fire, the cyclic rate was found to be too high when used on fully automatic. In 1936, Semenov's next design was finally adopted by the USSR as the Автоматическая винтовка Semenova model of 1936, also known as the Semenov automatic rifle of 1936. The rifle fired the full-length 7.62 by 54 mm M1908 cartridge,
as used in all variants of the Mosin Nagant. The rifle also used a rack-in 15-round detachable box magazine. An adjustable gas system included a metal grilled area forward of the handguard for excess propellant gases to bleed off safely, and a long piston that was directly impinged upon by propellant gases, as well as a separate spring-loaded second piston, or tappet, nearest the bolt carrier, which would be hit by the gas piston and then knock the bolt carrier to the rear, starting the bolt assembly cycle of operation. The bolt was locked during firing by two flapper extensions, which locked into the sides of the receiver, and were extended into battery by movement of the bolt as it went forward inside the carrier. The underside locking wedge, a holdover all the way from the 1926 rejected trials rifle, was also present. Troops found the rifle's recoil to be excessive when it fired on fully automatic, and parts breakages was also a source of many complaints. The huge integral recoil and barrel jump reducing muzzle brake on the business end of the barrel helped matters somewhat, but fully automatic uncontrollability, parts breakages, and overall weight remain matters that cried out for a solution. Between 34,000 and 65,000, Soviet sources differ among themselves, AVS-36 rifles were produced entirely at factory number 74 of the Izhevsk arsenal up to 1939. In 1938, new trials saw designer Fyodor Tokarev The creator of the successful automatic rifle prototype in the year of the Rochepet prototype in 1908 before the Great War, won out over Simonov's updated AVS-36 offering, and his rifle was adopted as the Semi-Automaticheskaya Vintovka Tokareva 38, or Tokarev semi-automatic rifle model of 1938. Tokarev's rifle featured gas piston operation, a bolt that tilted down and up into a locking bar at the bottom of the receiver, immediately to the rear of the magazine well, and did away with the bolt-actuated locking wedge, as had been the case on Simonov's designs. Tokarev's rifle also included a 15-round rack and magazine, and was chambered in the standard full-length 7.62 by 54R millimeter cartridge. The 1939 to 1940 Winter War with Finland saw the AVS-36 and SVT-38 used in the fighting, and the aforementioned problems surrounding the AVS-36 increased in intensity. The SVT-38 suffered fewer problems with breakage or reliability, although recoil was just as severe as both rifles used in the same full-bore .311 caliber rifle cartridge. Border battles with Japanese units in Manchuria at Halkhin-Gol, or in the Monhan to Japan, in late 1939 also saw brief AVS-36 frontline usage. Some SVT-38s were used in the Winter War, and 2,500 were captured by Finland and used by the Finnish Army and Civil Guard. The writing was on the wall by 1940, however. The next Soviet service rifle would not be a Simonov design, at least for the moment. Old-school bolt-action M9130 rifle production continued even into late 1941, as Germany invaded the USSR and the battle was joined. Modifications to the original SVT-38 design led to the SVT-40/AVT-40 rifle, succeeding the earlier Tokarev design by that same year, in time for some of the early fighting after Germany's Operation Barbarossa, although the many hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers, and sometimes sailors, airmen, and naval infantry, killed or captured in the first months of the Wehrmacht's drive eastwards, were mostly using Mosin variants.